WBNY and comment there. That's facebook.com/91.3 WBNY. Courtesy Bright.
All right, welcome to Living for the People. This is L. Nathan here, your host for this next hour. Welcome you to our broadcast focused on providing insight into events shaping our national and regional world and the facts behind those events and policies that are shaping our world for today and for tomorrow. Join us weekly on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. following Amy Goodman's Democracy Now! Program. And of course, you know our program is live, so you can call and you can join our discussion. We really hope that you will. Our number here again is 716-878-5104. That's 716-878-5104. And I know that Norm and Willie join me. Whenever we start the program, we have the soundbite of James Brown introducing the program, and it always seems soothing to me. I don't know why. I just feel
it's like his presence is here. It's like
I love it. I love it. Sometimes I don't even want to go into the intro of the program. I just want to sit for a minute, and bask in that thought. So much love to him. Much love to Kaki, to his nephew, just a great thing. We have Norm McCarter, who's here, who's our citizen of our nation. He's our in-studio audience of one, but he represents the views of many. Hey, Norm.
Hey, good morning, Mr. Hare. Thank you.
You know, I'm always put that platform up for you to stand on.
My man.
And, of course, our actual engineer who actually knows how to do all of this information technology stuff that makes these programs possible, Willie H. How you doing out there, Willie?
I'm doing well. Happy Friday to everybody. Living for the People. Call in at 716-878-5104. That's 716-878-5104.
So how does the Thank God It's Friday theme work for the people that really don't want to work and aren't working on Friday?
I woke up this morning. I was rested, but it was like, I don't want to get out of bed.
I know when I talked to you this morning, you were like, is he calling me now? It's okay. You know, we're all good.
Yeah.
So listen, I wanted to talk about a few things. The first is something that I've been waiting to happen for some time, and we're just beginning to see some inkling of it now. And Norm, I think you're going to connect with this because this is something that you've talked about for a number of shows.
Okay.
Which is the waning of the Trump effect.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Trump has somehow had this machismo or something, this aura around him that he's been invulnerable, to criticism. And anybody else who did just one of the things that Trump has done would have been run out of the country. They couldn't even keep their citizenship.
Yes, sir.
Trump does like 16 of those things every hour, every day.
Absolutely.
And nothing happens to him, right?
But here's the other side of that, what you're talking about. People expect that from him. And it's like, we know him.
Yep.
And we're good with that. That's the other side of it.
You're better off with the devil you know than the devil you don't know.
Absolutely. I think that's what most people...
But the problem with that is we know the other devil. We know Joe Biden. We've known him for 48 years, okay?
Yeah.
Right.
We have a resume on him.
Right.
We know what he will do under different circumstances because he's shown us in the past what he would do. Donald Trump, you don't have that record on. The only thing you've seen from Donald Trump under pressure is that he just doesn't know what to do when he's under pressure.
Yeah.
Germs come from other countries, call themselves COVID-19 or coronavirus. They come with their germ swords and whatnot. Other people would have figured out, well, we need some artillery to beat up, the germs. But not Donald Trump. He says, oh, no, there's only 15 cases in the entire country. Only one person died. By next week, there won't be anybody. Now, I'm not making that up. That's what Trump said in February of 2020, right? You were about to say something, Nora?
I'm going to add this.
Right.
I really wasn't, but I'd like to add it.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Hare, I was watching something on the news the other day. They showed an event when President Biden, we don't know if he misspoke or we don't know if it was if it was, but they made it into a lie. They said it was a lie
Mm-hmm.
that he taught at Penn State, at Penn for a period of time, and it kind of was an untruth from what they say. I guess they fact checked it, and they said that he didn't teach. He got like some kind of an honorary.
He got an honorary
degree.
doctorate.
He got an honorary doctorate.
He didn't get the honorary doctorate for teaching. He got his honorary doctorate because he was a famous, noted person from the state of Delaware.
He claimed that he taught there. So anyway, this is what the rub is. It's not a. I mean, I think he may have misspoke.
Well,
or anything.
Let me put it in this context. I could say legitimately that I've taught for the University of Buffalo. Now, I was not actually a teacher for the University of Buffalo.
Yes, sir.
I had somebody recruit me to come and teach some classes, right?
Yeah.
To a body of students who were in a program at the University of Buffalo. So somebody said, well, Mr. Hare taught me this, blah, 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 at UB. That would be correct, but would also be incorrect. I was not actually hired as a online faculty.
Right.
I was really a guest lecturer.
Well, Mr. Hare, here's my point. Something as smallish as that. Now, this right here, what difference does it make where he taught, when he taught, if he did or not? But all of the lies that President Trump has told, and I mean, they don't make news.
But Trump's lies are like, the background painting on the wall.
Yeah.
You don't pay any attention to that stuff, right?
I mean,
That's it. That's absolutely it.
When a Democrat lies, you have to call the United Nations. Do you all see what happened?
it was really crazy, and I was kind of a little bit upset about that they would even bring something that smallish or minute up, when you basically compare it with the things that Trump has lied about. I mean, it doesn't even make sense to even say.
Right. See, the reality is, if the people who are in power, who have the responsibility for enforcing the law or enforcing policy, if those people themselves don't believe in the law and don't believe in the policy, then there's no just way for you to get anything done. I take you to what our history has been, in the United States. You have police engaging in brutal, behavior towards African and Hispanic citizens of the United States.
Many years.
The reason why nothing happened to those people is because the people who were in control of the police, the precinct captains, the sheriffs, the police commissioners, etc.
Yes,
those people also had these hostile attitudes towards black and brown people.
They deserve it.
Right? So even though you had laws that say you're supposed to behave a certain way, they could get away with that because the people who enforced the law didn't believe in the law. That's what's happening right now. You have 70% of the Republicans, maybe a higher percentage than that, who just don't believe that anything Trump does to attain or regain power in this country is wrong.
Yeah.
They don't believe that. They believe that anything Trump does to regain power is right because they want him to regain power. So you can't get justice. You can't get honesty.
Because to them, it's like, by all means necessary.
Right.
Do it, Trump. Whatever you got to do.
Right. I mean, honor does not even, visit these people's mouths. They don't even know what that word honor means. So you can't make change with people in a smooth, coherent, predictable, understandable way if one side of the conversation is bound by law and bound by policy, bound by custom, and the other side of the conversation is only bound by their lust for their power to keep themselves in power.
Right.
Go ahead.
Mr. Hay, I was talking to a white, he must have been a Republican because I mentioned Trump. He goes, yeah, I don't like the way Trump does things, but he gets stuff done that we want. And I'm like...
And then, so you should ask people when they respond to you that way, you should say, oh, really? What did he get done?
Right.
Then they stumble mouth because they don't know what he got done. They just know that if you're in the club of, white nationalists or ethno nationalists or Christian nationalists or some kind of nationalist, if you're in that club of the ins as opposed to the outs, or as opposed to being the others, then you're okay, right? That's how they see it. So it gets into a little bit of what I wanted to talk about today. I was looking at what's coming forward. We got the Iowa caucuses that are coming up right now.
Okay. Yeah.
And that Trump is going to do real good in the Iowa caucuses, in the Republican caucuses, because they want somebody like Trump to continue to be in power. But in New Hampshire, which is the next caucus state or primary state, I think it's a caucus state, New Hampshire. It has a reputation for being, and this is going to sound weird, being lovers of freedom. Then they may not be lovers of freedom for you and me. You know what I'm saying? But they're lovers of freedom.
Can you explain what the caucuses are, what they mean?
So a caucus is where you have delegates to the caucus that are elected from electoral precincts, election districts. Mm-hmm. And their role is they come together and they talk about the pros and cons of issues that are going to be up for a vote, for the next election, or people that are up for election or re-election.
Okay.
They sit down and they dialogue about that, and you can come to the caucus and you can try to sell people
your own particular people that you think
you go in there and say, listen, I don't care what that man said. I'm the man on the scene with the gangster lean. I do the camel walk. Me and mom used to, I don't know if y'all remember the camel walk.
Yeah. Hey, I told you my pops was nice with the camel walk.
With the calypso stuff we used to do, yeah. Right? And but that was the world, at that time. Well, that's what these caucus people do. They have these kinds of person to person conversations with each other. One of the reasons why this Ron DeSantis guy has lost a lot of favor or flavor or favor for his flavor, I think that's the right way to say it, that he's lost ground, is because in caucus states, you have to actually talk to people. You have to come to a meeting and you have to shake people's hands, and people say, well, what do you feel about this? Somebody says, well, I got some water that was on a piece of my property. It's not there all the time. It only comes, in rainy season in April. It disappears, by June. Then it'll come back again in September. It'll disappear by the end of October. And that Joe Biden, he's trying to regulate my water on that piece of property. What are you going to do about it? Now, that seems stupid to you and me because we live in cities, right, and our water comes out of taps, or we buy the water at the store. For him, his water comes out of a well. And that water is accessible drinking water for him. That water goes into, a tank and is treated, and it becomes available for farming use or whatever, purpose they need that water. To them, regulations are expensive. There are a lot of changes you got to go through to access something that God put there. You know what I mean? It was dry, in February. It's wet in April. Yeah. It's dry in June. It's wet again in September. God did that. So they're saying, why are you in the middle of it? Why do I have to talk? Why do I have to go through all these changes with you, all this paperwork with you, and so on? Those are the kind of issues that get talked about in caucus states.
Okay.
In primary states, that doesn't happen.
Yeah. I just want to just use an example. It kind of didn't make sense to me, but it does now. I went down south.
I was just going to say, the reason why it doesn't work for people like Ron DeSantis is because you have to shake somebody's hand. You have to touch somebody.
Yeah.
You have to explain to somebody why you have the position. Number one, you need to have a position, or explain why you don't have a position, right? And what you will do about whatever it is they're talking to you about. Mm-hmm. So somebody says to you that, my cousin's daughter is 13 years old and she got raped by, a distant uncle or cousin or something. And she didn't want to have the baby. Why should she have the baby? This was not her fault, and so on. And I see that you all are out here with this anti-abortion thing, and you won't let her abort this baby. Why should she at 13 be put in that position when she was the victim of a crime that put her in that position in the first place?
Right.
You would have to dialogue with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't front like you can on a commercial. On a commercial, you can just create, a little plastic, a show and control the message. But when you're in a caucus and you're talking to people one-on-one, you have to explain what you mean. And the person you caucus with hears what you say, and they repeat what you say to other people in the caucus. So you can't just run your mouth and say stuff that is completely insane,
Right.
because the people you're caucusing with will tell on you.
Yeah.
So that seems to be eroding Ron DeSantis, because he really is not an honest person. He's a dishonest person. And his dishonesty is revealed in caucus, context.
Yeah.
In New Hampshire, the Freedom people, they don't believe in freedom for everybody, but freedom for them, freedom to kill ducks, freedom to kill deer, freedom to
freedom on the download to kill people.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's baked in. Right? You got that. In other words, they're believers in freedom as long as it's their freedoms.
Right.
Right. So they come to you come to a state like New Hampshire, you would expect that they would be like all in for Donald Trump, because he's the champion, the whatever the word is, he's like the century, for that cast of people. But what's happened here, I went to this article written by James Bickerton in Newsweek, and it says that the Democrats actually flipped a key swing seat in Congress, not in Congress, but in the New Hampshire, what do you call it? The New Hampshire legislature. Why that's important is that legislature was had a majority of one Republican, made the majority in that state legislature. That made it possible for the Republicans to push through changes in election law to make their elections permanent. That's what the Republicans do. They change the law so that nobody can ever get elected but the people the Republicans want to get elected in those election districts. They gerrymander, they change rules, they change where polling places are, they do those kinds of things. But if you were to turn a couple of those seats into Democratic seats, the Republicans wouldn't have the majority, and those initiatives that the Republicans have been making to cheat, to control elections for themselves, those things would disappear. Now, you could say, well, the Democrats could turn around and do the same thing. Yeah, they could, but the Democrats don't. Democrats tend to be a party that has a lot of different political views inside the party.
Right.
So if you have 50 Democrats in a legislature and 50 Republicans in a legislature, you can count on the 50 Republicans voting the exact same way, because that's their law. They're not into policy and right and wrong. They're into group power.
Well, I think that's why a lot of times Republicans get away with murder, because inside the Democratic Party, some of those people agree with some of the ways they think.
Excuse me. Willie, that's an important point. Some of the people in the Democratic Party are just as conservative and just as right-wing as the right-wing people in the Republican Party. They're just Democrats because they've always been Democrats. Just like when I was 18, I became a Republican when I registered to vote because my father was a Republican, right? And his father was a Republican.
Wow.
So I just voted for them because, I rolled with them because that's what I knew.
Right.
And they're Republicans because Abraham Lincoln was a Republican.
Wow.
Even though Abraham Lincoln wasn't really the same kind of Republican as the Republicans we have today.
Right.
But people today don't understand that distinction. They just see Abraham Lincoln was a Republican. He's a great guy. So I'm going to be a Republican because it'll make me a great guy, be associated with great people and whatnot. Not realizing that the Republican Party today is the boll weevil Democrat Party of yesterday. It's the same cast of people. But the point I'm making is that the legislature in New Hampshire, state legislature, is now going to be majority by one, majority Democrat. So a lot of the stuff that the Republicans were seeking to get done won't get done in the new legislature. The important part of that, though, is that this is a state that voted heavily for Donald Trump in the last presidential election in 2020. The fact that this state went for a Democrat, or the state went for a Democrat in the state legislature as opposed to a Republican in that race, says something about how the population in New Hampshire is feeling about Republicans per se.
Yeah.
And if Republican support is waning, and I'm not saying this to say that you should be Republican or be Democrat or be progressive or be this or that. I'm just saying that you need to have some confidence that if you explain things to people, people can hear real explanations and they'll change the way that they think about something if they hear real quality information, about what's right and what's wrong. So it made me go to something else. We may talk a little bit more about this as we go along in the program. But if you think about it, whenever you hear the media people talking about, and this is because the budget crisis is which I've been harping on for months, but the budget crisis is no longer months away. Now it's 10 days away. 10 days before the government shuts down.
Yeah.
Not because there's any reason why it has to shut down, just because there's 5 or 6 Republicans in the House of Representatives who say that if I don't get my way, it's the highway for everybody. And you just have to suck it up. That's what's really going on right now. When the media talks about this, they always say, well, these right-wing Republicans, they're trying to hold out for spending cuts. They want to see more spending cuts. Number one, the debt ceiling crisis that we had in July was resolved by a budget framework that set ceilings on budgets for all the different departments of the federal government. That was done in July of this year. The Republicans have turned around and said, well, we don't care what we agreed on in July this year. We're disavowing that agreement, and we're going to start the whole thing all over again. Exactly what I said to you at the time.
You did.
They're just going to keep creating more choke points. And every time you reach a choke point where you need a majority of something in order to move to the next step, the Republicans will use their majority to prevent you from moving so that they create this chaos all the time. And it's chaos management so they can have their way. The media issue that I was trying to get to the surface here is that the media always talks about this as the right-wing folks and reduction of spending. They make it seem like what makes them right-wing is their penchant for or their desire to see spending reductions. They didn't have spending reductions when Donald Trump was the president. They weren't talking about spending reductions then. So why were they conservatives then not focused on spending reductions, but now they're focused on spending reductions when a Democrat, is in the White House? That's one piece of it. But the other piece of it that's more important in my mind is this connection of being right wing and being concerned about budget expenditures. I say this because we're not, when you talk about spending money, you can spend money by buying new things, more things than you were buying before. That's one way to spend money. But another way to spend money is to deny yourself revenue that you historically have been able to count on. So if I was counting on 11% of payroll coming back to the federal government as taxes, I know we got a few minutes here, coming back to the government as taxes, and you reduce taxes by 10%, that means 1% of the revenue that I used to get, I'm not going to get. Now, 1% may not seem like that big a thing to you, but we're talking about almost $5 trillion. Just wrap your mind around that. $5 trillion. 1% is $500 billion a year. That's how much money that we lost as revenue because of the tax cuts that Donald Trump, and let me not let anybody off the hook, because I know that Willie H. was a fan of Barack Obama, loved him. Barack Obama's, I drink his tea, we're cool, blah, blah, blah. I get it. I know he talks stuff about his wife, but I told you stop saying that stuff. But it's okay. We're going to let that slide. The point here is Barack Obama kept half of the tax cuts that George Bush had put in place, which meant that the government was not getting that revenue anymore. If you don't get revenue, you either have to find revenue from another source, or you have to reduce your expenditures, or you end up going in the hole. So that was $100 billion on Barack Obama's, watch that we lost as revenue because of these tax cuts. Now, Donald Trump comes in and we lose $400 billion. I'm using round figures. $400 billion. So now it's $500 billion in revenue that we don't get. Well, if you got that revenue, that would add 10% to the budget, as opposed to losing 1% of your budget and going in the hole by that 1%. You would actually be ahead by 9% if you just put those tax cuts, rescinded those tax cuts and collected the revenue the way you had been collecting the revenue. You wouldn't have the budget crisis that you have right now. Now, the reason why we got over to the area of $1 trillion a year in deficits is because of the fight that they had to wage for the recession in 2007 and 2008, 2009. They had to spend money to get out of that recession. But Barack Obama got that spending down to less than $700 billion a year. When Trump comes in, you get the coronavirus, the COVID-19 crisis, and expenditures went up not just by $1 trillion. Remember we talked about this, Willie? Expenditures went up over the course. We talked about this over like a 5 or 6 month period. We borrowed $6 trillion from the future. Mm-hmm. The reason why I keep harping on that, when I go to buy, well, I shouldn't say for me because I bought my car outright, but my wife, she buys her cars on installment plans. So she's gambling that the $400 she spends on her car note, she's going to make enough revenue next year to keep paying that $400 a month, right? So she's gambling on that. Well, she's gambling on that because she knows she has the revenue stream coming in to cover that. But if you gamble that the way you're going to pay off the $6 trillion is by economic growth, and the economic growth, the growth of the economy, the GDP, doesn't grow enough to make up that $6 trillion, where does that money come from? It goes into debt. And you just end up borrowing that money year in and year out and paying the interest on that money year in and year out. And you keep going further and further in the hole. That's what we're facing, right now. And that's what doesn't get talked about when the media discusses this issue about budget. They don't talk about the revenue that the country has lost because of these tax cuts that were not balanced by either revenue expenditures or alternate sources of revenue. Alternate sources of revenues may be the money you pay to go across the bridge from Detroit to Windsor, Ontario. Maybe that's $5. I don't know what it is, right now. Maybe it's $5 a trip, combined each way. Maybe you raise that by another $1. That creates more revenue. You have excise taxes, you have tariffs, whatever you have to find some revenue stream that will pay for these new expenditures that you have incurred, or you're going to go in the hole and you're going to stay in the hole. That's not what that is not the way this is being discussed in the media today, and I think it should be discussed this way in order for us to get intelligent responses from us as a public to our policymakers, so that we're making sense to them. We know what it is we want them to do. So listen, we got to take a quick break because we've been abusive towards our sponsors. So if you all don't go away, we look forward to talking to you on the other side of the break here at Living for the People at 91.3 FM WBNY.
You took the first step and quit smoking, but even former smokers may still be at risk for lung cancer. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know about a new low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early. It takes only 60 seconds and could save your life. You took the first step, now take the next. Visit SaveByTheScan.org for a simple quiz to see if you're eligible and talk to your doctor about screening. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
91.3 FM WBNY is proud to present Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman.
Welcome to Democracy Now!
Award-winning investigative journalism.
Is the NRA imploding?
Providing relevant analysis that makes you think.
Secret State Department documents, including evidence of U.S. war crimes.
Fact-finding reports you will not hear elsewhere. Democracy Now! Airs Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. on 91.3 FM, WBNY, Buffalo. Ready for radio that's challenging, innovative, and encouraging? Tune in, Living for the People.
This is L. Nathan Hare. Join me right here, 91.3 FM WBNY. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 9 a.m. after Amy Goodman's Democracy Now! We'll provide objective analysis regarding current issues. Call 878-5104. It's Living for the People on 91.3 FM WBNY. All right, welcome back to Living for the People. This is L. Nathan Hare, your host here. We're here with Norm McCarter, who is our citizen in studio audience of one. How you doing there, Norm?
Pretty good, Mr. Hare.
You heard him talk, you know he's insightful. And of course, we're here with our engineer. He's the smart person here. We get to do a lot of talking, but he does the actual doing. Willie H., who does the live streaming of the program. Welcome, Willie.
Welcome, everybody, to Living for the People with L. Nathan Hare. Stay tuned at 10:10 for Latino History with Italia.
All right. So we're facing, again, another government shutdown. This is repeatedly stupid. I've said this many times. The reason why I say it so often, this paradigm I'm about to share with you, is because many of the people in our audience are younger and don't remember how things used to be. It used to be that in February of every year, a president issued a budget message. This was, usually after the State of the Union address. State of the Union sort of outlines where the president intends to, where he's been and where she, where they would like to go. And then they give a budget message, which provides you with a financial framework for how they're going to pay for what they have done already and where they intend to go. That's what that's for. Then you have generally from late February through April for the Congress to come up with a budget, resolutions that cover the same things. They negotiate with the president, they negotiate with the Senate and the House of Representatives, and they come to a budget resolutions and they publish the budget generally in May. And the reason why they do that is because the budget year begins October 1 of that year. You need to know October 1 of that year that you can count on a certain amount of money that's going to pay for this or that expenditure that's going to be covered by the various departments of the federal government. If you don't do that, you start the year with uncertainty. Yeah. What they do is they do these temporary resolutions that fund the government for 6 weeks or 11 weeks or something like that. Then you have to go through the same nonsense over and over and over again 3 or 4 times a year, right? Go ahead, Norm.
I just have a question. I took a little notes before, and I guess I didn't get a chance to complete them. But I know that the budget ends on 9/30/23. We run
Right.
out. And you were speaking of a discretionary budget and a mandatory budget.
Right.
The discretionary is 2.7 trillion.
Trillion, right.
Mandatory 4.1.
Right.
Can you explain that to me?
So mandatory means that you have to do these things. So let's take Social Security. Social Security is an insurance program. Well, I guess it's an insurance program, but it's more like a retirement program. Mm-hmm. But it's a retirement program that has a lot of other elements to it. It has a program to help people who are disabled or who are underabled, who are alternately able. It has a program to help people who never had a job at all. You know, they've never worked because they were housewives. So there's no record of them accumulating Social Security,
Okay.
you know, credits and so on. So there's a lot of pieces to, you know, that Social Security Act. But fundamentally, it's a guaranteed income program that you pay into every time you get a paycheck. You take 6.6% and you put that into a fund, and that's money that you can draw on. You know, it's supposed to be compounding with interest.
Yeah.
And when you turn 59 or 62 or whatever age you choose to retire at, you can now draw down money from that fund.
I got you.
That has to be paid. That can't not get paid. You'd have 100 million people in this country that wouldn't be able to eat. So that has to get paid.
So
right?
that's part of the mandatory budget.
Right, that's mandatory.
Okay.
Discretionary, even the military is discretionary. You don't have to go to war. You don't have to blow people up.
Okay.
Seriously, you could actually live, you could go all the way from Tuesday of this week until Thursday of this week and not kill a single person, and the United States would still be here at the end of the day on Thursday.
But I got you. But I'm sitting here and I'm looking at the numbers. Now, we haven't went to war.
Right.
But I know we are still funding.
Well, we've been doing war type stuff.
Yeah, we're funding. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and you know, taking care of the Ukraine. But this is just a quick thing. I'll just put out. Obama's last budget was in 2017, $646 billion.
Right.
Okay, so then we went into Trump, and Trump started gradually just taking the budget up like crazy on military spending.
Right. This was the budget conscious Republicans. You know. We gotta reduce spending. But how far did spending go the very next year?
It went from 646. The next year, it only went up to 682 billion.
Right.
But the following 2 years, it went to 734 billion.
Yep.
And then 778 billion.
Yep.
So
that's not counting the money that was spent in 2020 to fight the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah.
If you put that money in there, you would see $3 trillion in 2020 and another $3 trillion in 2021 on top of those expenditures. But you're right on the money.
Well, this is your words.
Right.
I just took a little notation.
Right. It's important for people to understand. I'm not sure I'm being effective in the way I'm saying this. If you were an individual, try to break it down to your own household. If it's your household, and your household usually gets $3,000 a month, and something comes up where somebody runs a car into the side of the house, and now you got to repair a whole side of the house, the siding, the infrastructure, foundation, everything's got to be done. And it's going to cost you $30,000 to do that. You don't have $30,000 because you barely make $36,000 in a year.
Yeah.
So how do you come up with this money? Well, what you do is you try to borrow the money. So what does it cost to borrow $30,000 a year? Well, over the course of, say, a 30-year period, if you take out a home, a second mortgage on your home, that $30,000 loan over a 30-year period will probably cost you somewhere in the area of $250 to $300 a month. So that means you're taking on your monthly budget. You're taking on an extra $250 to $300 a month. But if you only make $3,000 in a month in the first place, you're probably pretty tight, in terms of your budget expenditures. So for you to increase your expenses by $250, you probably have to cut some expenses someplace else in order to be able to pay that money. What expenses will you cut? History shows people cut drugs they take, for their medication. You got medications, people that are spending $400 or $500 a month just on medication to stay alive.
Medicinal marijuana.
I don't know about the minister. I don't know about that, but people are spending money, to stay alive. So people will start reducing the amount of money they spend on things they need in order to pay for that additional expense that I just described.
Yeah.
Well, think of the COVID-19 crisis or the coronavirus pandemic. Think of that as a new expense. That all of a sudden a bill shows up. $6 trillion. You don't have $6 trillion.
What was that? Pharmaceuticals that made that money? Who made that money?
Well, pharmaceuticals made a lot of that money, but remember, most of that money. I mean, because Willie got some of this money too, right? Don't let him hide on you, right? They had the Payroll Protection Act. Remember that one, right? That if you keep these people working, we'll give you money back. Well, you just prove to us that you kept them working, and you send the bill to us, and we'll pay you the money back. There was the Payroll Protection Plan, the PPP program, and it really didn't do this, but some people that Willie knows did this, right? And some people were not even telling the truth. They were saying they had hired some people that they never actually hired.
I remember we had probably in 1990 something. We had a contract with a pharmaceutical. Man, we was living large then. I went to Puerto Rico, had a resort. And that's when I realized pharmaceutical, they make a lot of money.
They're killing us, right? I mean, take insulin. Something like 20% of the people in the entire United States take some form of insulin. So that's 60 million people every single day taking 1 or 2 pops of insulin every day. Even if it only costs you $10 a pill, that's just in one day, right? You got $600 million in a single day just for insulin.
And insulin
every day
is very expensive too. When you really look at it,
that's my point. Now I don't know how much insulin costs. But whatever it costs, I know it ain't free,
man.
Right?
And it ain't $10 either.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to help us. Wow. That's what President Biden has been fighting over, and it wasn't really his fight. It was Obama's fight, but Obama wasn't able to get all of this done during his administration. He got a lot of it done, but some didn't
allow
get done.
them to get most of these things.
Well, Trump went to do everything he could to stop those reforms. Yeah. Biden then restored those policies, and we're getting traction now, right? But the point I'm making is that $6 trillion that showed up in your expenditure column in 2020 and 2021, that money has to come from someplace. When they were first talking about this, right? You asked, where did that money go? Remember the unemployment enhanced unemployment program, where you make $300 a week, you now got were put into unemployment, you got laid off, so now you get $150 from the unemployment office. They added $600 on top of the $150.
People was
lay
really,
me off
really...
now. Lay me off quickly, okay?
Yeah. And that's an idea. Right now, still there were so many people that just didn't want to go back to work. Still, people that are
See, and I'm not going to put it on people being lazy and not wanting to come back to work. I'm putting it on people that know how to count.
Yeah.
And if I've been making $300 a week, for the last 2 or 3 years, and I've got my budget organized around that, and then I get laid off, now I'm short $300 a week. And then I go to the unemployment office, they say, okay, now I know you've been working for a while, here's $150. I said, well, $150 don't make up the $300 that I just lost, right? But I'll take what I can get. And then Donald Trump shows up and says, I'm the rescue man. I'm going to help you. I'm going to put $600 in your pocket on top of whatever you get from unemployment.
Wow.
I took that bet right away.
It's a no-brainer. It really is a no-brainer.
Quickly took that bet, right?
Yeah.
Problem is that when this all gets done, you're going to go back to your old expenditure pattern. You still have this bill that has been created, and you got these people who may not have paid their bills over the course of this time, like rent, and so on. remember I told you with this rent a moratorium.
Yeah.
They're not giving you money to pay your rent. They're just saying that you could just legally not pay your landlord the rent money you owe your landlord. So what happens when the moratorium ends and 15 months have gone by and now you owe $13,000 to $15,000 to your landlord? What happens then? So now they put out some programs to help you to buy down some of that debt, but the programs only cover $3,000 or $4,000. You're $15,000, $13,000, $14,000 in the hole already.
Yeah.
So what happens is your landlord says, keep your money. Okay, I don't want nothing from you. I want you to take this piece of paper. It says you have 6 days to get your stuff out of my house, put it over here on the corner someplace outside, put a for sale sign, a garage sale sign on it. I don't care what you do with it, but leave my house. You got 6 days to leave my house. That's what's really going on right now. That's what happened. So it's important for us to understand these policies, right? And so Donald Trump gets credit for doing nothing. He gets credit because he reduced taxes for corporations and for citizens by about $400 billion. But he didn't do anything to reduce expenditures by $400 billion. So that just became an extra amount of money that you had to pay out every year with no income stream to support it. You borrowed $6 trillion from the future. Well, guess where the future is? That's where we live right now. Right now, we're living the future that we talked about in 2020. Remember, the future isn't like far away. The future is whatever is that comes after now. That's the future.
Yeah.
We borrowed from whatever comes after now. We still have not figured out how to pay for what comes after now. So that's the situation that we're in. And remember, on that $6 trillion, you got to add interest on that. Let's say interest is 5% on $6 trillion. That means you're talking about something in the area of 300. I think I'm saying this right. $300 billion in interest.
Yeah.
On top of the $1 trillion, you owe another $300 billion in interest. All of this is money that you don't have. So every time you don't have money, you borrow money. You borrow money, you keep increasing the expenses that you have to pay month to month. That's the situation that we're in right now. So we're in a situation today where instead of having a continuum of opinions, some liberal, some progressive, some conservative, some moderate, some centrist, and so on, and people coming together and wrestling around these issues and coming up with a consensus plan that they could all agree on. You have the Republicans on one side that are trapped by the most right-wing part of their party, who says, you do it the way I say you do it, or it doesn't get done at all. We'll just blow this whole thing up. You got the Democrats on the other side saying, well, somebody from the Republican Party's got to come over here and talk to us and see if we can negotiate. You can't negotiate with people that don't want to negotiate with you. You need two sides in a negotiation. Otherwise, you're just talking to yourself, right? That's what's happening right now. Democrats are talking to themselves. They're not negotiating with the Republicans because there's no Republicans to negotiate with. Kevin McCarthy does not have a policy framework of his own. He's not bound by any policy or any values that he's attached to. He's just trying to administer, the politics in his party in the House of Representatives. That's not a policy position. Who is trying to work through a policy position? If your one policy or position is the farthest extreme that you can go, either you cut government spending by 10% or shut government down altogether. If that's one side's position, and you don't have anybody on your side who has a position like that, how do you negotiate? What are you negotiating with? So that's the position that we're in right now. What's his name? Montana Congressman Ryan Zinke. He used to be a Navy SEAL. He put it in this in these terms. He says it's hard to govern when you have snipers inside the perimeter. And I thought about you, Norm, when I read this. I said, Norm probably understands that, right?
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, you know, the perimeter is what you think you got control of,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so you thinking inside the perimeter, you can turn your back on people, you know, because that's a friend over here and it's a friend over here. But what happens if the friend over here ain't really your friend?
You don't know where to go. Yeah.
That's the situation that America is in right now.
Yes, sir.
So House Republicans have so far managed to pass only one of the 12 appropriation bills that are supposed to be passed by September. Excuse me. That are supposed to be passed by September 30th. Only one of those bills have been passed so far. The debt ceiling bill that was passed in July said that you have to pass every single one of those 12 appropriation bills. If you don't, then they're going to cap government expenditures for all departments by 1% over what it was in 2023. Those government expenses can only go up by 1%. That was the deal that was struck in July. So if you only have one of these 12 appropriation bills done by now, what's the likelihood you're going to get another 11 of these appropriation bills, all of which are the harder bills, you know, for you to get funded right now? The odds are slim
Really
and none.
slim. Now, you know, we celebrated almost back then like it was a victory, but it was just them basically setting things off because they know sooner or later they're going to wind up getting, I'm not going to say most of the things that they want because we should be able to do something about that, but they trying to get everything that they want or shut the country down.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
The Republicans are saying, well, if we just stay locked together and be intransigent, what can they do? They got to come through us to get a bill out of Congress in the first place because the Constitution says that all legislation starts in the House of Representatives. So even if the Senate came up with a law, they'd have to give it to us, and we would have to agree before it could go back to the Senate for approval. So if you need a majority of the House of Representatives and you have a four-person majority in the House, then you can block anything from being done in the House that you don't agree with.
Yeah.
That's what's going on right now. So they're holding the country hostage to what they want. Now, what's the flip side of this? If they got what they wanted and you had to shut government, you had to reduce expenditures by 10%, what would that mean? You can't take the 10% from Social Security because that's a contract between you and the public. People are paying money every time they get paid. They're putting money into this compulsive contract, you know, that sets money aside for you for when you retire or you get sick. So if you can't touch Social Security, and that's the biggest chunk of expenditures in the budget, where are you going to get this 10% from? And it won't be 10%. It may be 15% for other departments outside of Social Security because Social Security doesn't get touched at all.
I bet you they go to infrastructure.
Absolutely, all that climate, you know, change stuff, the Inflation Reduction Act stuff, the child care, you know, tax credit stuff, the earned income tax credit, all that stuff gets thrown off the table, gets blown up, in order for you to be able to reduce government by the amount that these Republicans want government reduced by. If you do that, you're going to create so much chaos in the public that you're going to end up with so much strain. The strains and the cost of the strains are going to be more than what you would have expended if you had not done this in the first place. But the Republicans simply don't care. You know, they'll do this and then say it's a Democrat's fault. Excuse me. The reality is we should be spending more money out of our checks for taxes to do things collectively that can't be done well individually. Let me give you the same example I've given you sometimes before. This Medicaid, Medicare stuff. States are paying the lion's share of Medicaid. Well, I shouldn't say the lion's share. I think states pay something like 35 to 39% of the cost of Medicare. And excuse me, counties pay, a large chunk. I don't remember exactly how much it is. The counties pay a large chunk. I think the federal government pays something like 10 or 15% of the total cost of that Medicare, Medicaid budget. So what would be a wiser way for us to do this? If you think about it, you're paying money out of your pocket for your share of the premiums for your health insurance, right? So if you're in a place that has a group plan, you're probably paying something in the area of $300 or $400 a month, for your health insurance. That's not onerous, right? And you get a lot for it. But let's suppose if we averaged out for every adult American what the cost of health care is, and let's say that cost is somewhere, as I had done the numbers before.
You spoke about this before, Mr.
Between $6,000 and $7,000 a year.
Yeah.
So if you just took $6,000 or $7,000 a year on average from everybody's paycheck, then you wouldn't have a health insurance premium that you'd have to pay. There'd be no deductible that you would have to pay. So all of those costs would go away. You would just have that, additional tax being paid out of your paycheck, to fund health costs.
Well, Mr. Hare, let me just say, now I'm in agreement with you 100%, but just like we discussed before, how will these smaller insurance companies that we would wind up having to kind of shut down to bring it all to the bigger storehouse, how would they?
Sometimes in order for you to make your house work, you have to divorce your wife.
Got to divorce her.
I know they say, it would be cheaper to keep her. I know we used to say that, but that's not always true.
Hey, I want to keep mine, but as I say, when it comes down to it, this situation here, may have to let her go in this situation.
Yeah, sometimes it's cheaper to date her. It's not necessarily cheaper to keep her. I know that's ugly, but that's the reality.
Yeah.
You may have to lose some of these insurance companies.
We're gonna. Well, that's what my point is. I already see that we're gonna have to lose her. We bring everything to a bigger one. That's what you're saying?
Remember, people have been pimping this system for decades. They've been pimping and getting all kinds of murder they've been getting away with, right? Pharmaceutical companies are getting away with murder. All these people are getting away with murder and so on. And so if you create a system that is fair, that puts that tax, spreads that cost out over the entire population in terms of payroll deductions, and eliminate all of that waste of going to 15 different people to prove that you get insurance from this coverage or that coverage and so on, you would wipe that stuff out. You'd have to go through one central point. All that administration would be wiped out. And, it may involve clinics now, becoming government-run clinics rather than being privately run clinics. There's lots of permutations on this. I'm not saying that I've got all of that stuff worked out, because I can see the people with the razors in their hands wanting to come and slice me up right now. But you got to do something different.
It's going against a large population's self-interest, so that there's going to be
if you're going to do
pushback.
Radical change in order for you to control expenditures, that radical change means that people who are benefiting from the way that things are constructed right now, some of those people are no longer going to be able to benefit. That's good. Their interests are going to get hurt.
Yeah,
that's the reality. That was not what I was going to talk about today, but I think that's an important thing that Norm has brought up. We probably should visit with this again next week.
Yvonne said, "Very good show, guys."
I'm glad we're making sense. Thank you, Yvonne. I was worried for a minute where we were making enough sense.
Thank you, Dee.
Thank you all for listening to us and supporting us. We look forward to listening to Talia Rodriguez.
Yeah, Talia. It's called Latina Herstory.
Her story,
her story.
H-E-R story.
Her story.
Now, I never got to say that when it was his story. Nobody ever said it was my story. Oh, we do have my story. It's called Mystery. Okay, we're there. All right. We'll see you all on Monday. Have a great weekend. We'll see you all then.
J1 Trey. Why so serious?
And if you're not here today, you should have been.
It's the mafia.
Who next?
It's the mafia.
We next.
It's the mafia.
Who next?
It's the mafia.
We next.
It's us against them. It's us against the world. It's us against them. Buffalo against the world. It's us against them. It's us against the world. It's us against them. It's Buffalo against the world.
J1 Trey.
Pulling up in this big body like Gusto. You even rich like Reed and Diggs, we move so well. You should know the drill. You should know the vibes. If it ain't red, white, and blue, baby, that's not my size. It's the mafia, the fan base that'll die for you. On Sundays, we are not cool. Any other days, we'll ride with you. We heaven sent, we're Hamlin win. 3 spoke to God and said thanks, though. Having cool years real dope, but I really miss the fan base, though.
Now turn it up, turn it up, wave. 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 It's the mafia.
Who next?
It's the mafia.
We next.
It's the mafia.
Who next?
It's the mafia.
We next.
It's us against them. It's us against the world. It's us against them. It's Buffalo against the world. It's us against them. It's us against the world. It's us against them. It's Buffalo against the world.
Yeah, you were sweet and you were so
Woo!